Welcome to Slothful Slumber, the podcast where we transform the vast knowledge of the internet into a gentle lullaby for your mind. I'm your host, Luna Dreamwell, and I'm here to guide you on a journey to tranquility through the soothing cadence of Wikipedia articles. Each episode will delve into the most wonderfully mundane and sleep-inducing topics, helping you drift off into a realm of serene dreams. So find your comfortable space, close your eyes, and let the dull hum of information carry you into a restful slumber. Now, let's embark on tonight's voyage of tranquil learning as we explore a topic so peacefully uneventful, it just might whisk you away to the land of dreams. This Wikipedia article is titled Cook Strait. Cook Strait, Maori, Te Moana o Raukawa, separates the North and South Islands of New Zealand. The strait connects the Tasman Sea on the northwest with the South Pacific Ocean on the southeast. It is 22 kilometers, 14 miles, wide at its narrowest point, and is considered one of the most dangerous and unpredictable waters in the world. Regular ferry services run across the strait between Picton in the Marlborough Sounds and Wellington. The strait is named after James Cook, the first European commander to sail through it in 1770. In Maori, it is named Te Moana o Raukawa, which means the Sea of Raukawa. Raukawa is a type of woody shrub native to New Zealand. History. Approximately 18,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum, when sea levels were over 100 meters lower than present-day levels, Cook Strait was a deep harbor of the Pacific Ocean, disconnected from the Tasman Sea by the vast coastal plains, which formed at the South Taranaki Bight, which connected the North and South Islands. Sea levels began to rise 7,000 years ago, eventually separating the islands and linking Cook Strait to the Tasman Sea. In Maori legend, Cook Strait was discovered by Kupe the Navigator. Kupe followed in his canoe a monstrous octopus called Te Weke a Muterangi across Cook Strait and destroyed it in Tory Channel or at Pattaya. When Dutch explorer Abel Tasman first saw New Zealand in 1642, he thought Cook Strait was a bight closed to the east. He named it Zeehane's Bight, after the Zeehane, one of the two ships in his expedition. In 1769, James Cook established that it was a strait, which formed a navigable waterway. Cook Strait attracted European settlers in the early 19th century. Because of its use as a whale migration route, whalers established bases in the Marlborough Sounds and in the Kapiti area. From the late 1820s until the mid-1960s, Arapawa Island was a base for whaling in the Sounds. Pirano Head on the east coast of the island was the principal whaling station for the area. The houses built by the Pirano family are now operated as tourist accommodation. During the 1820s, Te Rauparaha led a Maori migration to and the conquest and settlement of the Cook Strait region. From 1840, more permanent settlements sprang up, first at Wellington, then at Nelson, and at Wanganui. At this period, the settlers saw Cook Strait in a broader sense than today's ferry-oriented New Zealanders. For them, the strait stretched from Taranaki to Cape Campbell. So these early towns all clustered around Cook Strait or Cook Strait in the pre-geographic board usage of the times as the central feature and central waterway of the new colony. In 1866, the first telegraph cable was laid in Cook Strait, connecting the South Island telegraph system to Wellington. Between 1888 and 1912, a Risso's dolphin named Pelorus Jack became famous for meeting and escorting ships around Cook Strait. Pelorus Jack was usually spotted in Admiralty Bay between Cape Francis and Collinet Point near French Pass, a channel used by ships traveling between Wellington and Nelson. Pelorus Jack is also remembered after he was the subject of a failed assassination attempt. He was later protected by a 1904 New Zealand law. At times when New Zealand feared invasion, various coastal fortifications were constructed to defend Cook Strait. During the Second World War, two 23-centimeter gun installations were constructed on Wright's Hill behind Wellington. These guns could range 28 kilometers, 17 miles, across Cook Strait. In addition, 13 6-inch gun installations were constructed around Wellington, along the Makara coast, and at entrances to the Marlborough Sounds. The remains of most of these fortifications can still be seen. The Pencarrow Head Lighthouse was the first permanent lighthouse built in New Zealand. Its first keeper, Mary Jane Bennett, was the only female lighthouse keeper in New Zealand's history. The light was decommissioned in 1935 when it was replaced by the Bering Head Lighthouse. A number of ships have been wrecked with significant loss of life, such as the Maria in 1851, the City of Dunedin in 1865, the St. Vincent in 1869, the Lastingham in 1884, SS Penguin in 1909, and TV Wahine in 1968. Timeline. According to Maori legend, the mythical navigator Kupe follows, in his canoe, the octopus Te Weke a Muturangi across Te Moana o Raukawa, Cook Strait. 1642. Abel Tasman mistook Cook Strait for a bight. 1769. James Cook established it is a strait. 1822. Ngati Toa migrated to Cook Strait region, led by Te Rauparaha. 1831. Whaling station established in Tory Channel. 1851. The bark Maria wrecked on rocks at Cape Terawiti. 28 people killed. 1855. Severe earthquake on both sides of Cook Strait. 1865. The paddle steamer City of Dunedin sank in Cook Strait. 50 to 60 people killed. 1866. Cook Strait submarine telegraph cable laid. 1869. St. Vincent wrecked in Palliser Bay. 20 people killed. 1879. Kangaroo laid the first telegraph cable across Cook Strait. 1884. Lastingham wrecked at Cape Jackson. 18 people killed. 1904. Pelorus Jack was protected by New Zealand law. 1909. SS Penguin wrecked in Cook Strait. 75 people killed. 1920. First aeroplane flight across Cook Strait. 1935. Air services began across Cook Strait. 1962. Cook Strait rail ferry service began. 1962. Barry Devonport swims the strait. 1964. Cook Strait power cables laid. 1968. TV Wahine wrecked at entrance to Wellington Harbor. 53 people killed. 1975. First balloon crossing, made by Roland Parsons and Rex Brereton. 1975. Lynn Cox became the first woman to swim the strait. 1979. Paul Caffin crossed the strait in a sea kayak. 1984. Philip Rush swam the strait both ways. 1984. Meta Mackenzie became the first woman to swim the strait both ways. 1990. Stephen Priest made the first crossing and double crossing by hovercraft. 1991. 5 new power and communication cables laid. 1994. First fast ferry service began operation across Cook Strait. 2002. 2 further communications cables laid. 2005. The retired frigate HMNZS Wellington was sunk off Wellington as an artificial reef. 2008. A resource consent was granted to Neptune Power to install a $10 million experimental underwater tidal stream turbine capable of producing 1 megawatt. 2008. Energy Pacifica applies for resource consent to install up to 10 marine turbines, each able to produce up to 1.2 megawatts, near the Cook Strait entrance to Tory Channel. 2013. First crossing made by a paraglider, achieved by Matt Stanford. 2013. 2 large earthquakes measuring 6.5 and 6.6 on the Richter scale struck Cook Strait, causing significant damage in the town of Seddon, with minor to moderate damage in Wellington. 2021. First electric aircraft flight across Cook Strait from Omaka Aerodrome to Wellington Airport by Gary Friedman in a Pipistrel Alpha Electro. Geography. The strait runs in a general northwest, southeast direction, with the South Island on the west side and North Island on the east. At its narrowest point, 22 kilometers, 14 miles, separate Cape Terawhiti in the North Island from Pirano Head on Arapawa Island in the Marlborough Sounds. Pirano Head is actually further north than Cape Terawhiti. In good weather, one can see clearly across the strait. The west, South Island coast runs 30 kilometers, 19 miles, along Cloudy Bay and past the islands and entrances to the Marlborough Sounds. The east, North Island coast runs 40 kilometers, 25 miles, along Palliser Bay, crosses the entrance to Wellington Harbor, past some Wellington suburbs, and continues another 15 kilometers, 9.3 miles, to Macara Beach. The Brothers is a group of tiny islands in Cook Strait, off the east coast of Arapawa Island. North Brother Island in this small chain is a sanctuary for the rare Brothers Island tuatara, while the largest of the islands is the site of the Brothers Island Lighthouse. The shores of Cook Strait on both sides are mostly composed of steep cliffs. The beaches of Cloudy Bay, Clifford Bay, and Palliser Bay shoal gently down to 140 meters, 460 feet, where there is a more or less extensive submarine plateau. The rest of the bottom topography is complex. To the east is the Cook Strait Canyon, with steep walls descending eastwards into the bathyal depths of the Hikurangi Trench. To the northwest lies the Narrows Basin, where water is 300 and 400 meters, 980 and 1,310 feet deep. Fisherman's Rock in the north end of the Narrows Basin rises to within a few meters of low tide and is marked by waves breaking in rough weather. A relatively shallow submarine valley lies across the northern end of the Marlborough Sounds. The bottom topography is particularly irregular around the coast of the South Island, where the presence of islands, underwater rocks, and the entrances to the sounds create violent eddies. The strait has an average depth of 128 meters, 420 feet. Oceanography. The waters of Cook Strait are dominated by strong tidal flows. The tidal flow through Cook Strait is unusual in that the tidal elevation at the ends of the strait are almost exactly out of phase with one another, so high water on one side meets low water on the other. This is because the main M2 lunar tide component that happens about twice per day, actually 12.42 hours, circulates anti-clockwise around New Zealand and is out of phase at each end of the strait. On the Pacific Ocean side, the high tide occurs 5 hours before it occurs at the Tasman seaside. On one side is high tide and on the other is low tide. The difference in sea level can drive tidal currents up to 2.5 meters per second, 5 knots, across Cook Strait. There are numerous computer models of the tidal flow through Cook Strait. While the tidal components are readily realizable, the residual flow is more difficult to model. Probably the most prolific oceanographer to research the strait was Ron Heath, based at the New Zealand Oceanographic Institute. He produced a number of studies, including analysis of tides, which identified the presence of a virtual amphidrome in the region. Heath also quantified a best estimate for the time of the residual current, that is, net current after averaging out the tidal influence, in the strait. This continues to be a topic of research with computer simulations combining with large data sets to refine the estimate. Despite the strong currents, there is almost zero tidal height change in the center of the strait. Instead of the tidal surge flowing in one direction for 6 hours and then in the reverse direction for 6 hours, a particular surge might last 8 or 10 hours, with the reverse surge enfeebled. In especially boisterous weather conditions, the reverse surge can be negated, and the flow can remain in the same direction through 3 surge periods and longer. This is indicated on marine charts for the region. Furthermore, the submarine ridges running off from the coast complicate the ocean flow and turbulence. The substantial levels of turbulence have been compared to that observed in the Straits of Gibraltar and Seymour Narrows in British Columbia. Tidal power. The electrical power generated by tidal marine turbines varies as the cube of the tidal speed. Because the tidal speed doubles, 8 times more tidal power is produced during spring tides than at neaps. Cook Strait has been identified as a potentially excellent source of tidal energy. In April 2008, Neptune Power was granted a resource consent to install a $10 million experimental underwater tidal stream turbine capable of producing 1 megawatt. The turbine was designed in Britain and was to be built in New Zealand and placed in 80 meters, 260 feet, of water, 4.5 kilometers, 2.8 miles, due south of Sinclair Head, in waters known as the Karori Rip. The company claimed there is enough tidal movement in Cook Strait to generate 12 gigawatts of power, more than 1.5 times New Zealand's current requirements. In practice, only some of this energy could be harnessed. As of October 2016, this turbine had not been built, and the Neptune Power website is a placeholder with no further announcements. On the other side of the strait, Energy Pacifica applied for resource consent to install up to 10 marine turbines, each able to produce up to 1.2 megawatts near the Cook Strait entrance to Tory Channel. The company claimed that Tory Channel was an optimal site with a tidal current speed of 3.6 meters per second, 12 feet per second, and the best combination of bathymetry and accessibility to the electricity network. However, despite being validated by computer modeling, no project was forthcoming. Cables. Electric power and communication cables link the North and South Islands across Cook Strait, operated by Transpower. 3 submarine power cables cross Cook Strait between Otauranga Bay in the North Island and Fighting Bay in the South Island as part of the HVDC Inter-Island, which provides an electricity link between Benmore in the South Island and Haywards in the North Island. Each cable operates at 350 kV and can carry up to 500 megawatts, with pole 2 of the link using 1 cable and pole 3 using 2 cables. The link's total capacity is 1,200 megawatts, 500 megawatts for pole 2 and 700 megawatts for pole 3. The cables are laid on the seabed within a legally defined zone called the Cable Protection Zone, CPZ. The CPZ is about 7 kilometers, 4 miles, wide for most of its length, narrowing where it nears the terminals on each shore. Fishing activities and anchoring boats are prohibited within the CPZ. Fiber optic cables carry telecommunications across Cook Strait, used by New Zealand's main telecommunication companies for domestic and commercial traffic and by Transpower for control of the HVDC link. Marine life. Cook Strait is an important habitat for many cetacean species. Several dolphins, bottlenose, common, dusky, frequent the area along with killer whales and the endemic Hector's dolphins. Long-finned pilot whales often strand en masse at Golden Bay. The famous Pelorus jack was a Risso's dolphin being observed escorting the ships between 1888 and 1912, though this species is not a common visitor to the New Zealand's waters. Large migratory whales attracted many whalers to the area in the winter. Currently, an annual survey of counting humpback whales is taken by Department of Conservation, and former whalers help DOC to spot animals by using several vantage points along the strait, such as on Stevens Island. Other occasional visitors include southern right whales, blue whales, sea whales, and sperm whales. Giant squid specimens have been washed ashore around Cook Strait or found in the stomachs of sperm whales off Kaikoura. A colony of male fur seals has long been established near Red Rocks on the South Wellington coast. Cook Strait offers good game fishing. Albacore tuna can be caught from January to May. Broadbill swordfish, bluenose, mako sharks, and the occasional marlin and white shark can also be caught. Transport. Regular ferry services run between Picton in the Marlborough Sounds and Wellington, operated by KiwiRail, the Interislander, and Strait NZ, Bluebridge. Both companies run services several times a day. Roughly half the crossing is in the strait, and the remainder within the Sounds. The journey covers 70 kilometers, 43 miles, and takes about 3 hours. The strait often experiences rough water and heavy swells from strong winds, especially from the south. New Zealand's position directly athwart the roaring forties means that the strait funnels westerly winds and deflects them into northerlies. As a result, ferry sailings are often disrupted, and Cook Strait is regarded as one of the most dangerous and unpredictable waters in the world. In 1968, the TV Wahine, a Wellington-Lyttelton ferry of the Union Company, foundered at the entrance to Wellington Harbor and capsized. Of the 610 passengers and 123 crew on board, 53 died. In 2006, 14-meter waves resulted in the Interislander ferry DV Arateri, slewing violently and heeling to 50 degrees. 3 passengers and a crew member were injured, 5 rail wagons were toppled, and many trucks and cars were heavily damaged. Maritime NZ's expert witness Gordon Wood claimed that if the ferry had capsized, most passengers and crew would have been trapped inside and would have had no warning or time to put on life jackets. Airlines which operate or have operated flights across Cook Strait include Straits Air Freight Express, Air to There, CityJet, and Sounds Air. Swimming. According to oral tradition, the first woman to swim Cook Strait was Hein Pupu. She swam from Kapiti Island to D'Urville Island with the help of a dolphin. Other Maori accounts tell of at least one swimmer who crossed the strait in 1831. In modern times, the strait was swum by Barry Davenport in 1962. Lynn Cox was the first woman to swim it in 1975. The most prolific swimmer of the strait is Philip Rush, who has crossed 8 times, including 2 double crossings. Aditya Rout was the youngest swimmer at 11 years. Caitlin O'Reilly was the youngest female swimmer and youngest New Zealander at 12 years. Pam Dixon was the oldest swimmer at 55 years. John Couts was the first person to swim the strait in both directions. By 2010, 74 single crossings had been made by 65 individuals, and 3 double crossings had been made by 2 individuals, Philip Rush and Meta McKenzie. In March 2016, Marilyn Korzekwa became the first Canadian and oldest woman at 58 years old to swim the strait. Crossing times by swimmers are largely determined by the strong and sometimes unpredictable currents that operate in the strait. In 1980, the oceanographer Ron Heath published an analysis of currents in Cook Strait using the tracks of swimmers. This was from a time when detailed measurement of ocean currents was technologically difficult.